Okay, the drying has progressed to the point along the bars here. I don't know if the video will capture it, but I can see dulling progressing from quite dull here next to the bar to basically fading out to about this point. So that's my signal that I can go ahead and trim the bars away. So I take my knife, slide them alongside the bars, and I can twist those away from the slab. And basically the chocolate that has already begun to settle along the sides acts as a dam which keeps the still liquid center from spreading out now. So my first clue that my slab here may be ready to cut is that it's dull all over. The center is usually the last part of the slab to turn dull, but now it's basically a uniform dull, so that tells me that it's mostly on its way to setting. So I can do my fingertip test here. I touch in the center, and yes, it leaves a fingerprint, but it doesn't try to come away on my finger and doesn't raise a little peak. So that means I can now take my chocolate pattern and put it on there and be confident that the chocolate's not going to try to weld to my pattern. So if I lay my pattern on the slab, just press it lightly into place. I do my cutting with intentionally with a dull knife. I don't really want to cut the paper underneath, so a knife with a relatively dull tip can easily cut through the chocolate since the chocolate is not yet hard, but then it won't try to cut the paper or the plastic, whatever I've spread my slab out. In cutting, I'm going to try to keep my knife vertical, not slanted this way or that way, because then it won't be exactly following my pattern, and not slanting this way because I really only want the very tip of the knife dragging through the chocolate. The more I have it lying down like this, the more of the surface of the knife I have embedded in the chocolate, and the chocolate is going to try to stick to that. The knife will cut much more cleanly if I'm holding it straight up and down. So I'm just going to quickly slide my knife around my pattern. If I stray from the pattern, I can always back up a little bit and re-establish the line. When I come to a corner like this, I actually overshoot it. I go past it like that. See how my knife just went past that corner, and then I start again here and carry around, as opposed to trying to make the corner with my knife tip. Okay, having gone all the way around, you can just lift the cardboard up, and here's my cutout shape. Now, as you remember, whenever you do one of those little paper tests to see if your chocolate is tempered, we already talked about this, how when the chocolate dries, the paper will curl up. So the very same thing will happen on a bigger scale here with my slab. If I just leave it on this paper and allow it to fully dry on this paper, it will curl. And more often than not, I want my piece to remain flat as opposed to curling with the paper. The way to deal with it, there are actually a couple of different ways, but in this particular case, one easy thing I could do is, before the chocolate fully sets, to detach it from the paper. And if I actually peel the paper away so that the chocolate isn't attached to paper anymore, then when the chocolate shrinks, it's not going to try to curl. The thing that makes it curl is still being attached to the paper. So one thing I could do is let this set a little bit longer. It's almost to the point where I could do that, but let it set a little bit longer, flip it over, and peel the paper away. As soon as the paper is detached, it's no longer going to try to curl. Most of the curl of the chocolate happens at the very end. It hasn't happened yet at this point of setting. It will happen just before the chocolate fully crystallizes and turns hard. So if I can detach the paper before it gets to that point, then I will totally prevent curl. Stop it there. So now the drying has progressed. This is a couple of minutes later. The drying has progressed to the point where the chocolate is becoming quite firm, but hasn't really turned crispy yet. I can still sort of bend it and flex it. And it's at this point that I can peel the paper away to eliminate any possibility of curl. It's a simple matter of putting another piece of parchment here, flipping the whole thing over. Now notice I haven't detached the scraps from my cutout piece yet, because it's entirely unnecessary. And I could actually end up damaging my my shape by trying to peel away those scraps after I cut them off. So I just leave them on there. They're not a problem. They're not attached to that central piece anymore. Okay, at this point, I can just take that backing sheet, peel it away. It comes away fairly cleanly. I can lift away the scrap pieces, like that, and I'm left with my desired shape. Okay, so that's the piece that I actually want. And now that it's detached from the paper, it will not curl. So by the time this hardens, it will shrink very, very slightly, but in the act of shrinking, it won't curl and it will remain flat. The downside of doing it this way, of peeling away the backing before it fully sets, is that, as you can see, the paper that I peeled away actually took some chocolate with it. It takes a haze of chocolate with it when I peel away. Now in this case it doesn't matter because it was only spread out on a piece of parchment anyway. So the parchment itself wouldn't have given a pretty texture to the paper. But suppose I'd had this spread out on a piece of plastic or something with the intention of actually capturing the shine of the plastic. That will only happen if I allow the chocolate to set fully against that surface, because it's only when it's fully set against the paper or the plastic that I can peel it away without removing this very top surface of the chocolate slab. So if this were a piece of shiny plastic and I were trying to capture the shine of that plastic, I would have to let the chocolate fully set against that plastic before peeling it away, so that no chocolate at all would come away with the plastic. And then I would have the shine transferred to the slab. So I just want you to be aware that this trick of removing the backing before the curl sets in, you pay a price for that, in that you're going to lose the very top surface of your chocolate. Sometimes that may matter, it may not. Very often you're going to be doing something else with that surface anyway, so it doesn't really matter how that surface appears. Right now it's looking very dull and it's not very attractive, but if I had the intention of later going back and decorating this some other way so that that's going to be covered up anyway, it won't matter.